Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name's Sarah and my channel is called Your Two Shelf. Today I am filming my wrap up for the month of January, in which I have read a total of 9 books, so a pretty good start to the year so far. I set a goal this year of reading 100 books because last year I set a goal of 80 and I managed to read 97, and so I thought I'd try and get to 100 just to see. Who knows if I'll do it or not, but I'm not going to put pressure on myself. I just like having a target. So I'm on target so far anyway. So the books that I read this month, I had a good variety. I've got my little list on my lap, so I'm just trying to balance everything. So the first book that I read was one that I got for Christmas, and it's the first in a series, a fantasy series, and this is A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. So I haven't read her before. I've heard about her a lot on BookTube from those people who like fantasy, and this is a series following Feyre, who is a young woman who's been living in poverty with her father who has a disability and her 2 sisters, and she's been the person who's been trying to keep their head above water, find food for them and everything like that. And one day she's out and she is hunting and she kills a wolf, and it turns out that she hasn't actually killed a wolf, she's killed one of the High Fae, which are able to shapeshift. And so she's just in her home one evening when a High Fae bursts into the house and says that they've killed one of his friends, and to pay back, Feyre has to come and live with him in the kingdom of the Fae. And so she goes with him and it goes from there really. So initially she hates him, there's some romance in there, there's a curse on the Fae kingdoms, there's like an evil woman who is sort of ruining everything for the kingdom of the Fae. And so Feyre and Tamlin, who is the name of her captor, have to try and save things. So I really enjoyed this. It took me longer to read than I expected as the writing's really small, and I gave this one 4 stars, and I'm really looking forward to getting to the next one in the series. My husband bought me the whole series for Christmas, so I already have the rest of the series, which is great. I also did the That's What I Call Summer Readathon this month, which was hosted by Heather from Soggy Expat Book Nerd and Karen from Roving Reader. And the first prompt in this was to read a book about cool teens. So for this prompt, I read The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta, which I loved. I had this from the library and I got it out quite a while ago. I hadn't read it. So I loved The Black Flamingo. This is a book written in verse, which is following our protagonist Michael, who is a teenage boy. He is half Jamaican and half Greek Cypriot, and his mum is raising him on her own and he's struggling to find his identity. So I think because he is a queer mixed race person, he's not exactly sure like which group he belongs to, and he is trying to find his place in the world. And this is just beautifully written in verse. I really loved his story. It's full of joy, it's full of like self-discovery, and he finds his place in the world as a drag artist, which I loved as well. And it was just wonderful, and I just think that any teen or adult should pick up The Black Flamingo, and I gave it 5 stars. I really loved it. Then after that, I read, what was next? Oh, yes. So let me just have a little sip of tea. So today I'm drinking Bird and Blend tea. This is apple strudel and it's absolutely delicious. I'm just going to have a little sip. Okay, so the next book I read was our book club choice, and it was The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. This book has been on my shelf for probably 10 years. I reckon it's one of the longest books I've had on my TBR, and I'm so glad that it was chosen for book club, because it's one of those books that will just always be held in a special place in your heart. This is one of those books where you finish it, you hug it, you want to keep thinking about the characters, you keep thinking about the country. Just amazing. So for anybody who hasn't read the Poisonwood Bible, because it's kind of like a modern classic. It's set in Congo in the 1960s, 1959, and it's they go out there because the dad, who is a preacher, he's Nathan Price, and he is this hideous, awful character. He has a wife and 4 daughters, and he takes them all out to the Congo, and he is trying to save the people who are Congolese, and he wants to convert them to Christianity, and he is very puritanical. He is an extremist. He raises his family in this way, and we never hear from him, but we hear from his wife Oriana. We hear from her at the beginning of each section, and then all the four daughters tell the rest of the story, and it's a wonderful exploration of Congolese culture and about the sort of ideas of when white people go into a black country or a different culture, and they think that they can try and whitewash their culture, and it's just like how appalling that is, and how wonderful the culture is in this country. And yet just to give you a small example, when they go, the American family, the Price family, they take all these seeds from America, and they've got an idea that they're going to make a small holding, and they plant all the seeds. And one of the women who live in the village, she says, look, you can't plant the seeds like that here. You have to raise the beds because of the weather. You have to make mounds, and you plant the seeds in there. And Nathan Price just says, you don't know what you're talking about. He does it his way. She then comes and very kindly makes the mounds and puts all the plants in for him. And then he's so angry by this that he just comes out and kicks all of her work, and none of his plants flourish. And it's just those kind of examples. He's trying to say things in their native language, and he gets it all mixed up because he makes no effort to really learn like the girls do. And the girls are all very different characters, and one of them is kind of appalling. One of them is really young, and then there are twins who are quite different to the others and get a lot more absorbed into the culture and everything. And then it's also about the what makes me just like fuming about how the Congolese gained independence from Belgium, and they elected a leader who was doing a wonderful job, and America didn't approve of this leader because he was going to make Congo basically independent, and they wouldn't be able to pillage all the natural resources anymore. So they assassinated the leader and just put their chosen dictator in place, and that kind of thing just makes me like so mad. Just that people can. How do people sleep at night who are these leaders who do these kind of things? I just don't understand. But anyway. So there's a lot in this book, and it was wonderful, and I loved it. I think it took her about 20 years to write, and it's just wonderful. So 5+ stars, and definitely going to be one of my favourite books of the year already. Just wonderful. The next book after that I read was also for the Summer Readathon. So this was for a book that had a sort of a mystery or a puzzle in it. And I chose another TBR veteran, The Trouble with Goats and Sheep by Joanna Canon. So I've had this for absolutely ages as well. And I just hadn't picked it up. So this book is about, it's set in the heatwave of 1976 in Britain, and it's about Tilly and Grace, who are sort of 10 or so years old, and they live in a neighbourhood where everybody knows everybody. And one of the women from the neighbourhood, I think Mrs. Creasy, is she called Mrs. Creasy? Yeah, she goes missing, and she just disappears one day, and the girls are determined that they are going to find out what's happening. So we hear from different residents in the close, and there is a little map which I did have to refer to a few times at the beginning of the book here, which tells you all the different houses and who lives in them. And we hear from different families, and we try and figure out what's happened to Mrs. Creasy, but then there's actually a much darker secret which is going to come out as part of everybody's looking into what's gone on with Mrs. Creasy. So I enjoyed this. I gave it, I think, 3.75 stars. I wanted to keep reading to find out what's happening, but it didn't blow me away. So yes, that was the next one. Okay, so after that we have an audiobook, which is The Fell by Sarah Moss. So I'd heard people talk about this and thought it sounded really interesting, and I got it from BorrowBox for free. So it's a 4-hour audio, so it's really easy to listen to. If you have BorrowBox, then I suggest you borrow it. This is about Kate, who is a woman, I'd say in her 50s. This is set during COVID, during the early days of COVID. And Kate lives in Yorkshire, and she loves going outdoors. She loves walking. She has a teenage son. She's a single mum. She's quite hard up. She works at a local cafe, and she has to quarantine because in the early days of COVID, it's so much of COVID that you forget about, which you remember when you hear this. She is in contact with somebody who tests positive, and in those early days you then had to isolate, and so did your whole household for 14 days, which now just seems like incredulous, but anyway, so that's what you had to do, and it was the law that you had to quarantine. So Kate has had a contact at work with somebody who has COVID, so her and her son are in isolation, and she's really struggling mentally. And her son's doing okay, but she's even to the point where she's got her medication and she's wrapped it in a parcel and put loads and loads of tape around it so that if she was tempted to take an overdose, it would be much harder for her to do. So she's struggling to that extent, and she decides that they live in a quite a remote place. She wants to go out for a walk across the fells in Yorkshire. She walks there all the time. She's like, I'm just going to go for half an hour's walk. I'm not even going to see anybody. I'm not putting anyone at risk. I'm just going to go, even though she knows she's breaking the law. So she goes out and she just keeps walking and keeps walking. Even though it's getting dark, she decides she's still going to keep walking because she just doesn't want to go home yet. And for some reason, she hasn't told her son where she's going. She hasn't taken her phone because I think she just thought she'd be absolutely fine. And anyway, she has a fall. And so then other people have to become involved, and she's broken the law. So I won't tell you any more than that. But the things you forget about COVID, the things that you had a £10,000 fine if you broke the rules, people would shop in their neighbours for breaking the rules, like different things that you totally forgot about. Like I say, the 14-day quarantine for contacts and all that kind of thing. It was really, really good, and I didn't find it traumatic to listen to in terms of that it's about COVID, but obviously some people may do. But I thought it was fantastic, and I really recommend it. I gave it, how many stars? 4.5 stars. Really good. Then I read a book on my Kindle, which was for the Summer Readathon again, for a book set in summer. And I read, this has got 2 different titles. So one title is You and Me on Vacation, and the other is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. So one's the American title, one's the British title. I read this on my Kindle. I read this book as Mina of Mina Read said this was one of her favourite books of the year. I did read Beach Read by Emily Henry last year, and I thought it was okay, but I didn't love it. So I kind of went with a bit of trepidation, but I'm trying to also work through my Kindle books as well. So this was perfect for this prompt. And I did really enjoy this. So this is about Poppy and Alex. And Poppy and Alex met at university and they became friends, and Alex is very hot and very loves going to the gym and all that kind of stuff, but he's not going to the gym to look good. He just goes to the gym because he finds it helps him sort of like mentally and because he wants to be healthy. And he loves reading and he loves academia, and Poppy is from like kind of a busy, like lively, loving family, and Poppy loves wearing like bright retro clothes. She's like a lovely character as well, and she loves travel. And every summer Alex and Poppy go away on vacation together, and Poppy has a travel blog, so she tries to go on really cheap holidays and blog about them, and then she gets a job at a really high-end travel company, so she then gets to go on these really expensive holidays without having to pay for them, and it always takes Alex as a guest. And we know that something's happened because at the beginning of the book she keeps talking about 3 years ago when they went to Croatia and she really misses Alex. And then we go back to like 10 summers ago, 9 summers ago, 8 summers ago, and so on, until we get up to the present day, and we have to find out what happened between them, and they have one last chance to kind of make things happen. And I did really enjoy this. I really liked Poppy and Alex. I thought that it's not like literary fiction, but it doesn't matter. It's enjoyable. I think I gave it 4 stars. Yeah, 4 stars. And it definitely, for me, was better than Beach Read, and I really liked the characters and their stories. Then I read Passing by Nella Larson, which I have here, but I actually listened to this on audio because I think I got this, it's in the books with Audible that is included in the free section. And this is a classic. This was written in, I think it was the 1920s, but I'm just going to check. So this was first published in 1929 and set in the Harlem Renaissance, and we follow 2 characters called Renee and Claire. So Renee and Claire grew up together, and they are both very light-skinned black women. And Renee has Claire moved away when she was really young because her parents died, and they haven't seen each other for a really long time. And then one day, I think it's in Chicago, they ran into each other, and they're both in a cafe when they run into each other. And Irene has married a black man and she has 2 boys, and she's still living in the same area as when she grew up. And Claire has married a white man and she is passing as white, and her husband is very racist and he has no idea that his wife is black. And so it's basically about their meeting, and then Claire kind of obsessively pursues Irene and wants to be friends, and Irene's really not sure because she's like, it's quite dangerous for you to hang out with us and be friends with us because your husband doesn't know that you're black and he'll be really angry, and you've got a daughter together, and what will the implications be for her? And but Claire sort of really wants to keep seeing Irene, and Irene is sort of attracted to the danger of carrying on seeing Claire and stuff. So this is, I was hoping this would be a 5-star read, but unfortunately this was kind of a 3.5-star read for me. I did definitely enjoy it, but for some reason it didn't just grab me as much as I thought it was going to. I've wanted to read it for ages, and so I'm glad I've read it, and I really want to read The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, which this story, Passing, inspired The Vanishing Half. So it'll be interesting to see if I prefer The Vanishing Half, but it is like a really good book, and it's written really well, and I'm really glad I read it because it's a classic. I just really hoped I'd love it more than I did. So the next book I read was one recommended by Jen Campbell, and it was a library book. It was The House Opposite by Barbara Noble. So, excuse me. This is a book which was written in the 1940s, and Barbara Noble was a survivor of the Blitz in World War II, and this is set in the time of the Blitz, so it's a very authentic account. And this follows our main character, who is having an affair with her boss. She is his secretary. She's called Elizabeth, and she's having an affair with her boss. She's in love with him. He is married with 2 children, and he said he can't leave his wife even though he doesn't have feelings for her, and he loves Elizabeth. Elizabeth has a really lovely relationship with her dad, and her mum has become a secret drinker in the Blitz to try and cope with it. Then it also follows their next door neighbour. There's a teenage boy who's kind of struggling with his sexuality, which I thought it was great that this was included in the book, seeing as it was written in the 1940s when it would have been illegal to be gay. And it's about him and his kind of aspirations to be like his cousin who's in the RAF, and also about his parents. And it's basically about the sort of the 3 families and how they interact with each other. And it's written beautifully. I thought that the writing was wonderful. I felt like I really got to feel what it was like in the time period, what the characters were like, to get inside their heads. And also just a different side of the Blitz, like how a lot of people didn't bother going to the air raid shelters. They just decided they were going to sleep because they were so tired and stuff, because a lot of people were doing their normal day jobs, then doing sort of warden jobs at night time, or they were having to go in for emergency nursing roles on their time off or in the evenings and stuff like that. So they were exhausted, and a lot of people just carried on, and they tried to find humour in bad things to try and keep going. And so I found it a very, very engaging and brilliant book, and that one I gave 5 stars. And the final book I read was Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan, which was a graphic novel which I read for the that's what I call summer readathon. I sadly didn't really enjoy this one. So this one I picked up from the library, and because I'd heard other people talking about it, I got it specifically for the readathon. The artwork was beautiful, and I just was, blown away by the artwork. But the plot wasn't for me. It was about 4 girls who are paper girls, delivering newspapers in the 1980s, which, that sounds good. But then they come across like alien spaceships and people are disappearing, and it's like a sci-fi story, and I wasn't into that. Sadly, that wasn't really, I didn't understand what was happening all of the time. And there are, I think, about 6 or 7 more volumes, but I'm not going to continue with that series, and I gave that 2 stars. So that was everything that I read in the month of January. And I'd love to know if you've read any of those books, and if you'd like to read any of them based on the descriptions that I've given so far. And I won't talk anymore because this has already gone to about 20 minutes, and so I don't want to keep on waffling. I have got other things I could say, but I'll save them for another video. So I hope you're having a really lovely week, and I hope you're reading some good books, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.